Hello everyone, welcome to the Chinese Culture Insights channel. Today, we continue to talk about the classic work Zhuangzi by the Taoist sage Zhuangzi, specifically the third chapter of the inner chapters, Yangshengzhu, the master of nurturing life. In the previous chapter of Qi Wu Luan, we talked about Zhuangzi's era, where various schools of thought such as Moism, Mencianism, and Xuanzi were competing for the favor of rulers with their own standards of right and wrong. They engaged in fierce debates, negating what the others affirmed and affirming what the others negated. Knowledge, in the eyes of these schools, had become a tool for personal gain, used for scheming and seeking fame and fortune. In the opening of Yangshengzhu, Zhuangzi states, Wu sheng ye you ya, zhi ye wu ya, yi you ya sui wu ya, dai yi. My life has its limits, but knowledge is boundless. To pursue the boundless with the limited is perilous. One's life and energy are finite, yet human desires are insatiable. The world is so complex that the secular judgments of right and wrong never have a fixed standard. If one uses their finite life and energy to chase after the infinite and uncertain, they will inevitably be extremely exhausted. If one does not stop in the face of extreme exhaustion, it is like speeding towards the end of life. Laozi once said, 故知止而不殆. Knowing when to be content prevents one from getting into trouble. Zhuangzi also said in Qi Wu Luan, thus, knowing what you do not know, knowing when to stop avoids danger. Questioning a person, if one can stop in the midst of the endless stream of material desires and cognition, that is the highest state. However, being in the secular world, it is often, the tree wants to be still, but the wind will not stop. You do not want to chase after the secular right and wrong, but the secular right and wrong will come to you. What should you do then? Zhuangzi said, 为善无尽名, 为恶无尽行. When your actions are seen by others as good, consciously stay away from fame and fortune, and do not let these things entangle you. When your actions are seen by others as evil, be careful not to break the law and suffer punishment. In short, on the one hand, transcend the secular right and wrong, and on the other hand, avoid being harmed by these things physically and mentally. In this way, you can protect your body and preserve your humanity. This is not only filial piety to one's parents but also a guarantee to enjoy one's life to the full. Next, Zhuangzi tells us 4 fables. The first one is the very familiar story of the butcher Ding. A butcher named Ding helped Wen Hui King to slaughter a cow. Seeing Ding holding a sharp knife, stepping on the stream stones, a series of actions were like flowing clouds and flowing water. The sound of the separation of bones and flesh, the sound of the knife coming out of the sheath, as if forming a certain rhythm, unified with the dance on the field. Wen Hui King exclaimed, wonderful, too wonderful. How can the technology reach this level? Ding put down the knife and said, 陈之好者, 道也, 近乎技矣. What I love is the way, which is beyond the skill. When I first learned to slaughter cows, I always saw a whole cow in my eyes. After 3 years, there was no whole cow in my eyes. Now I only rely on the mind to feel, not on the eyes to see. The functions of the eyes, ears, and other organs have stopped, and rely entirely on the mind to operate. According to the natural texture of the cow, my knife goes through the gaps between the muscles, in and out of the gaps between the joints, and operates entirely according to the cow's own structure. So even those places where the meridians are crisscrossed and the bones and flesh are intertwined will not have the slightest obstruction, let alone those big bones. Those more excellent cooks, the knife has a notch after a year. Those general cooks, the knife is broken in a month. Now I have not changed this knife for 19 years, and I have slaughtered thousands of cows, but the blade is still as new as when it was ground. There is a gap between the joints, and the blade is almost without thickness. With a blade that has almost no thickness entering the gap between the joints, there is too much space, and the blade is abundant. So the knife has been used for 19 years, and it is still like new. However, even so, when encountering some places that are particularly difficult to handle, I will be very cautious, focused, slow in movement, and delicate in operation. After completing, the whole cow is immediately disassembled, just like a pile of soil scattered. At this time, I stand with the knife, look around, and feel very comfortable in my heart. Then I wipe the knife clean and put it away. Wen Hui King said after listening, good, I have heard Ding's words and understood the principle of nurturing life. If we take this story out alone, we can easily come to the truth of practice makes perfect. But as a part of Yangshengzhu, Zhuangzi mainly wants to express how people should live. I personally got 6 inspirations from it. First, don't regard life as a whole cow, that is, don't regard life as a task or burden, but explore the journey of life with an open, peaceful, and adaptable attitude, walk every step with heart, and enjoy the scenery along the way. Second, follow the natural texture of life, don't do what you know can't be done, and don't seek what you know can't be obtained. Third, make yourself a knife without thickness, abandon some unnecessary secular entanglements, reduce some unnecessary desires, and let go of some unnecessary obsessions. Fourth, find the gaps in the secular world, stay away from the entanglement of right and wrong contradictions, try to avoid excessive friction between body and mind and external things, keep the heart pure, and let human nature always be as new. Fifth, in the face of complex life problems, we must be cautious, don't let ourselves fall into the abyss, and be swallowed by emotions and desires. Sixth, learn to be successful and retreat, and restrain your own edge. Next, let's look at Zhuangzi's second fable. A man named Gong Wenxuan saw You Shi on the street and exclaimed, "What kind of person is this? How can there be only one leg? Is this the will of heaven or the work of man?" Then Gong Wenxuan said to himself, "It is the will of heaven, not the work of man. Heaven made him only one leg. People's appearance is born, so it can be known that this is the will of heaven, not the work of man." The You Shi was a high-ranking official in the pre-Qin period. On the one hand, he was favored by the monarch, living a life of luxury and wealth. On the other hand, his body and mind were greatly restricted by the monarch. If he was born with a broken leg, this You Shi should not have the opportunity to be an official, so his broken leg should be the result of some punishment, which belongs to the work of man. But Zhuangzi said through the mouth of Gong Wenxuan that this is the will of heaven. Why? Because Zhuangzi believes that people are born between heaven and earth, and should be free and unencumbered. Since the You Shi is trapped in a cage, burdened by material desires, it is inevitable to lose the freedom of body and mind. Therefore, losing a leg can also be said to be the will of heaven. Moreover, since it is already in the cage, what's the difference between one leg and two legs? Next, Zhuangzi uses another fable to further illustrate this point. The wild chicken in the marsh, every 10 steps can peck a mouthful of food, every 100 steps can drink a mouthful of water. But even so, it does not seek to be raised in a cage. Although there is food and drink in the cage, the spirit is vigorous, but it is not at ease. Obviously, this fable is in contrast to the previous one. The You Shi is like a bird raised in a cage, although he is dressed in brocade every day, and he is arrogant in front of ordinary people, but he has lost the most important thing, freedom of body and mind. And Zhuangzi himself is just like that wild chicken, although he is poor all his life, sometimes worried about life, but he refuses to watch, would rather be a butterfly dancing freely. Perhaps in Zhuangzi's view, the freedom of body and mind is the greatest significance of life. If you are bound by all kinds of shackles, then it is no different from walking corpses. Compared with the various hardships encountered in life, the most difficult threshold for people to cross is the inevitable end of life. However, Zhuangzi is light in the face of death, and believes that life and death are just coming and going. Let's look at the last fable. Laozi passed away, and his friend Qinshi went to mourn. He arrived there, he only cried 3 times and came out. A disciple of Laozi asked him, "Aren't you a friend of my teacher?" Qinshi said, "I am." The disciple said, "Is it appropriate for you to mourn him like this?" Qinshi replied, "It's appropriate. I thought Laozi was a wise man who had obtained the Tao, and should not have too many secular entanglements. But today I don't think so. Just now when I went in to investigate, I found that some old people were crying there, just like crying for their own sons, some young people were crying there, just like crying for their own mothers. So many people gathered here, there must be some people who don't want to speak but speak, don't want to cry but cry. It is against the will of heaven and the true emotions. These people have forgotten their nature, which was called the crime of rebelling against nature in ancient times. When it's time to come, Laozi came, when it's time to go, Laozi went. Be at peace with the objective form and adapt to the changes of nature, so that the emotions of sorrow and joy will not invade the heart. In ancient times, this was called untying the heart tied up. In this fable, Zhuangzi depicts the attitudes of 3 types of people towards death. The first type of person is the wise man, just like Laozi and Qinshi, who regard life and death as coming and going, coming when it's time to come, and going when it's time to go, which is the most natural thing, without any emotions of sorrow and joy mixed in it. Although Laozi himself is not trapped by life and death, there are some people around him who have deep feelings for him, and these secular ordinary people are unwilling to accept Laozi's death due to subjective emotions, so they cry from the heart. But once there are many people, there will inevitably be some hypocritical people. These are the third type of person. They don't care about Laozi's death, but for some selfish reasons, they pretend to be, say a few words, cry a few times. The reason why Qinshi cried 3 times and came out was to separate from these people. Obviously, what Zhuangzi personally advocates is the attitude of the wise towards life and death, that is, to be content with the time and place, and not to let emotions of sorrow and joy enter the heart. At the end of the article, Zhuangzi proposed that knowledge is exhausted in the heart, or it is passed on and does not know its proximity. A candle will burn out one day, but the fire will continue to pass on, and there will be no end. Although a person's body will die, the spirit can be passed on forever. Although an individual's life ends, as a part of the universe, it will never disappear. Zhuangzi put the finite individual life of a person in the infinite situation at the end of the article, in order to eliminate the world's fear of death, which echoes the beginning of "My life has its limits, but knowledge is boundless." Due to the length of the text, I have provided a translation for only a portion of the original text. If you need the full translation, please let me know, and I will continue to provide the rest. Thank you for listening. In the next episode, we will explore the philosophical ideas in The World of Humans from the inner chapters. If you enjoy us, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to China Culture Insider 中国文化洞察者 channel, and hit the little bell to get our latest videos in a timely manner. See you next time.